There do need to be safeguards in place when it comes to children and social media, just like there's safeguards in place around anything else out there, whether it be medicine or car seats, you name it. There's industry regulation in place, and the government is protecting the most vulnerable among us, children. But there are no protections in place when it comes to young minds being online right now. Basically, the government views your child as an adult once they turn 13, and all bets are off. And it's terrifying.
Hey friends, and welcome back to the Paula Faris Show. I'm your host, Paula Faris, and we are wrapping up a series on parenting with an exclamation point. This is the hottest topic in your homes right now. We're talking about social media, phones, and screens. And before we jump in, I just want you guys to know, look, I'm not an expert on this. I have failed multiple times. I'd love nothing more than to throw my children's devices out the window. I think it'd be incredibly satisfying and cathartic. So the reason we're doing this topic is because I've heard from so many of you, and I posted something on my socials not long ago about Florida's proposed ban of social media for anyone under 16. And the comment section lit up, and I couldn't believe the differing views. And so that's what we're going to dig into today. We're going to look at this from all different perspectives, how this proposed ban is going to work, how it could affect the rest of us, how we navigate screens and phones. And I've invited my friend Brooke Shannon into the conversation. Brooke is the founder of the movement called Wait Until 8th. You may have heard of it. It's a movement to prevent our children from getting screens and smartphones until they're in 8th grade. I actually did a story on Wait Until 8th when I was back at GMA in my previous lifetime, and I actually signed the pledge to wait till 8th. I failed, just so you guys know. I'm human, and I'm still trying to figure this space out as well. But Brooke's going to talk to us about this proposed ban, if it can work, what she thinks about it. Again, lots of your opinions. We're going to bring those into the conversation, and how we can best navigate screens and phones in our own homes. And I think you'll be surprised as to what her preferred social media platform is for our children. This is a conversation I guarantee you're going to want to listen to over and over. You're going to want to take some notes, and please share it with every parent out there. We are all in this together, trying to just navigate our way through this uncharted territory. Without further ado, here is our new friend, Brooke Shannon from Wait Till 8th, as we talk about whether or not we should ban social media and how the heck we can handle phones and screens with our kids.
Hey there, I'm Maya Shankar, and I'm a scientist who studies human behavior. Many of us have experienced a moment in our lives that changes everything, a moment that instantly divides our life into a before and an after. On my podcast, A Slight Change of Plans, I talk to people about how they've navigated exactly these moments. Because as we all know, the only constant is change. So let's make the most of it. Listen to A Slight Change of Plans on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, Brooke. It's so good to see you again. It's been, 7 years, 8 years, something like that?
It's good to see you as well. It's been a while.
Yes, it has. So before we jump in, Brooke, you're a mom. How old are your children?
I have 3 daughters, and my oldest is 16, and then I have a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old, all girls. So I'm in the thick of it right now.
Yes, you are. And I have 3 children. I have a daughter and 2 sons who are 16, 14, and 10. So this is a conversation between 2 mamas trying to navigate the space of phones and social media. So to give everybody listening or watching a little bit of context as to how Brooke and I know one another, Brooke is the founder of a movement called Wait Till 8th. She's going to tell us a little bit about it in a second. But back in the day when I was still in TV news and worked at Good Morning America, we did a story. I was the reporter on the story and did a story about this new movement called Wait Till 8th. And Brooke Shannon was the founder and the executive director. So it's so funny, Brooke. I went back and I watched that video from, I think, 2017. So it's been a hot minute.
Yes, but we were a little younger.
A lot fewer grays, I should say. A lot of it related to the fight that I have with my kids all the time about phones and social media. Tell us a little bit about Wait Till 8th and the movement and how it started.
So yes, I started it, I guess, about 7 years ago. And I started it because I got that question that we all get as moms and dads. And that's, when can I have a smartphone, Mom? And at the time, my oldest was only in 3rd grade, and it seemed very young and too soon. I didn't know much about it. I don't think many of us knew too much about it. Like the research that we know now wasn't present then, but it just felt super young. So I just kept telling my kids, not yet, not yet, not yet. And they were very persistent. And then finally, one day I was just driving down my local street where our middle school was. And I noticed all these kids just completely glued to their screens. And I just knew in that moment that if I didn't do anything, that either my kids would have their heads down at that point in their childhood, or they would be one of the few with their heads up. And so that was really how the movement started. I reached out to about 20 other families just to see what they were thinking. And what I kept hearing from parents was that so many people wanted to hold off on this. But somewhere along 4th, 5th, 6th grade, like the pressure gets to be pretty intense, and it starts to feel like everybody has one, and you don't want your kid to be the only one.
Sure.
Without the phone, without the social media. And so eventually we all just cave. But the idea was like, well, what if we said not yet together? What if we came together as a community? Would it be easier to wait? And what we have found throughout the years since starting this is that it is easier to wait if you're waiting with other people on this important decision. So that's how we started.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this hot button topic of the proposed social media ban under the age of 16 in Florida. And people have wide varying feelings and opinions about it. We're going to talk about that, and also some helpful tools, guidance to navigate this space, and some of the big questions that our viewers have. And it's interesting what you talk about. You're looking at the kids and their heads are down. They're not really engaging. And Brooke, I signed this wait till 8th pledge with several families in my community back in New York. And it was so interesting because one by one, everybody dropped off. Everybody dropped off. I got my daughter a flip phone, and I found like that was the hardest part, is like, you don't want your kid to be the first. You don't want them to be the last. So much of it is the peer pressure. It's not so much the device. It's that our kids don't want to be the last one standing. And so if the group is not in solidarity, and the group that signs this pledge is not willing to say, hey, we're in it, and with this, we're not moving, it's not going to work. But we waited until, I think, 7th grade to get her a smartphone, but we did a flip phone before that. It's just, you're right. It is so hard. And I wanted to tell you that because I wanted to let you know that I kind of failed the wait till 8th pledge.
Well, you did not fail, because the average age a child gets a phone is 10 years old. So the fact that you made it to 7th grade, that's an extra 3 years that you gave your child without the distractions of the smartphone. So we encourage families to delay. I think that every year makes a difference.
It does.
And I do think it makes a difference that your child got a phone at 13 versus 10. And if you can make it to 14 or 15, I think that makes it even bigger difference. But I commend any parent that can hold the line on this as long as they can. So
I'm really encouraged that, like, even since we talked years ago, there's so many more resources. There are other options. There's Gab Wireless. There's Bark. A lot of different devices are out there that don't even offer social media. So you can get your kid a phone, but they won't have that temptation on the phone. And, we have a 10-year-old who wants a smartphone. I'm like, no, you may never get one because you already have addictive behavior. So, but it's encouraging to see that there are other resources and tools. And we're going to get into that in a second, and also talk about when we should give our kids a phone, which is a huge question that my viewers have. But before we do that, I don't want to bury the lead. And by that, I mean, like, the big newsy story that's out there is this proposed social media ban in Florida. You and I have been talking about it, and what it is, it's legislation in Florida that would essentially ban social media under the age of 16. The bill is called B1. It passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, and it's going to prohibit Florida minors from creating new accounts, and then it will terminate existing accounts of those that are younger than 16. And the way that they'll do that is by using age verification for account holders without a parental permission exemption. So it's all about using reliable age verification. And people have such differing views about this. I mean, it's honestly, like, I'm for it. I don't know how you feel about it. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people do like it. I don't think it's a red or a blue issue. The Tampa Bay Times wrote this, and they are sponsoring the bill. And I loved what they said, and I'm going to link to it in the show notes too. They said this is not a red issue or a blue issue. In Florida, we have a duty to protect our kids. That's what they wrote, and they are sponsoring this bill. So that's why the Tampa Bay Times is sponsoring the Florida bill to ban most social media for kids under 16. Let's get more into it. I'll take some viewer questions about this, but what do you think about this ban, and why is it important to really protect the minds of our children? What is social media in fact doing to our kids, especially our young ones, like 10 to 15 year range?
Yeah. So what we know about social media is that it's no place for young children. Mm-hmm. Children are the most vulnerable group out there.
Right.
And the social media platforms are very toxic. There's a lot of harmful, destructive content out there that children have no place seeing. There's cyberbullying. There's addiction issues. There's design features built within these platforms that are deliberately made to be addictive, because that's how they make their money. The longer that we spend on social media and the longer our children spend on social media, the more money these companies are making. So our children are not these companies' priority. The profit line is. So we need to keep that in mind. And there do need to be safeguards in place when it comes to children and social media, just like there's safeguards in place around anything else out there, whether it be medicine or car seats, you name it, there's industry regulation in place, and the government is protecting the most vulnerable among us, children. But there are no protections in place when it comes to young minds being online right now. Basically, the government views your child as an adult once they turn 13, and all bets are off.
That's so terrifying.
It's terrifying.
They don't even know how to make their bed. Well, actually,
exactly.
They're good kids, but still,
And so I commend the spirit of this law. I think mandates are very difficult, eventually, for them to go fully into effect and not be challenged in the court system. So I'm not sure exactly how this will all pan out in Florida, but any state and any leader in our country that wants to step forward and advocate for children, I am all about, because we need to be advocating for our kids. And this has to be a collaborative approach. It can't be just the government stepping in. It can't be just demanding more for big tech. It can't be just parents saying we're going to do it. It has to be an all-in effort on all parties. We need parents to be able to go into these apps and be able to put safeguards in place. And we can't right now. If I, as a mom, want to limit how much, say my daughter was on Instagram, I can't do that through the app itself right now. And so we need to make it easier for parents to be able to put safeguards in place. We also need to make it easier for parents that are already saying no to social media, making it that easier for kids not to be able to go in and do it anyways. We need schools to step up and stop allowing kids to be on social media all day long in the classroom. Like, we need better smartphone policies in place. And we need big tech to do better for our kids and to stop making these design features so addictive for such a vulnerable group of kids.
I want to talk a little bit about the bill, what it's going to do, how it's going to do it. This isn't going to target all social media. They're just targeting platforms that employ what they're calling addictive, harmful, or deceptive features like the infinite scrolling, the push notifications, and the autoplay. I have a friend who used to work for a large social media company, and she said one of the big issues is the designers and the engineers. Yes, these are startup companies. They're young. They don't have children yet, so they don't understand that world of navigating parental controls. And that was a big moment for me, a big aha moment. But she's like, they're preying on our children and they don't really care. There's usually eye rolls in the room whenever we talk about enlisting some sort of parental supervision or parental controls. But it's all about money at the end of the day. Just one company spent $390 million recruiting 13 to 15-year-olds, and they can't really self-regulate yet. But studies from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the American Federation of Teachers, Pew Research, and now the U.S. Surgeon General have warned us that social media use among young people is linked to increased anxiety, clinical depression, negative body image perception, and even increased thoughts of suicide. So let's talk about this bill. Again, overwhelming bipartisan support, saying it's not a blue or red issue. I am for it. And here's why. Our kids have to be 16 to drive, right? Because a lot of the naysayers will say this is an overreach of government. And again, at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for your kid. I'm going to do what's right for my kid, but this is where I'm coming from. They have to have age restrictions to drive. They have to have age restrictions and a license to get a tattoo. They have to present their ID when they want to vote, when they want to get a drink. This is a health issue. Why should there not be an age requirement? I posted about this not long ago, and Brooke, my comments were flooded. One of the big questions was, it's hard to enforce it. How are they going to ban it? They can just download the apps and lie about their age. I'm curious about the logistics. And this is what's cool about how they're going to do it. Again, it all comes down to reliable age verification. So if I go to a liquor store, I have to present my ID, right? They're going to have a third-party, independent, non-government entity that will require age verification. They essentially have to present their ID, their identification. It's going to be managed by an independent, non-governmental third party that verifies the age of all prospective account holders. The process will then protect the account holder's private information by mandating that any documentation that is received during the verification be then deleted. So that gives me a little bit of hope that this can actually happen. Like, they can't just lie about the age. My kids are going to have to show their license. They're going to have to show some form of ID. And my son said, we're going on vacation in Florida. He's only 14. He goes, if we go visit there, can I not be on social media? I was like, it hasn't been banned quite yet.
Yes.
But I kind of have some faith that they may be able to pull this off if they're using a non-governmental party and an independent entity to require age verification.
Yes, and they could possibly. I mean, we'll see how it all pans out. I do think that it would solve the collective action problem, because if you can't be on it till 16 and there's an age verification process in place, then there's less people that are on it at such a young age.
Yes.
And then there's less desire to be on it because nobody really is on there until you're 16. And so I think it would help today's youth tremendously if we could get social media out of elementary school and middle school.
Yeah.
I think that would be a giant step forward. And if we can keep it out of, the first couple of years of high school, that would be incredible. So we'll see where it goes. But what we really do need is something at a national level when it comes to this problem, because as you know, it's not just in Florida, and we need Congress to act. I know that they do their, every year and a half or so, they bring in all the tech execs and yell at them, but we need action and we need national legislation in place.
Yeah. And right now it's basically just the honor system. You don't use the honor system to get a driver's license and to drive a car. You don't use the honor system to buy alcohol. You don't use the honor system to get cigs and smokes and to get a tattoo and to vote. Yes. You have to have identification, right? And one of the other reasons, again, inside information from my friend who worked at a very large social media platform, said they're preying on these 12 to 15-year-olds in general. That's really a group that they're going after because they become highly addicted to it. They start the scrolling, but they also know they have access to their parents' credit cards.
Yes.
So it is all about the money. It's all
so
about
true.
the money while they're targeting it.
And girls, especially between the ages of 10 and 14, are the most vulnerable on social media and the most captive audience and the most likely to spend hours and hours and hours a day on these platforms.
So I'll be the first to admit, I haven't been great with monitoring all of this. And for the people that say, hey, parent your kids, it's your problem. You know what? It's real overwhelming for us. And I think you ask any parent out there and they will say, this is probably the number one fight is over phones and social media. I can't tell you, Brooke, how many times I fantasize of taking my kids' phones and chucking them out the window or running them over with a car or smashing them with a hammer. True story. One of my friends did that. And she said it was very satisfying. But it is the biggest fight and it's hard to navigate. And it shouldn't just be on the parents. I'm sorry. We all have a collective responsibility in raising the next generation. So for those that say it's the parents' problem, I say it's not.
It's not. And there's so many parents out there that are trying to do the right thing, that are trying to stay on top of it. And it's hard. It's even for somebody like me, I'm reading about this stuff all the time. I'm constantly having to go through, my older two have iPhones now. They're in high school. And I'm constantly having to check the screen time because it gets wonky every time there's an update. It's easy for it to get off track. And it's hard to stay on top of it all.
Totally. Yeah, just some of the comments from people when I posted about this, they said, it's odd that the political party fighting so hard for parents' rights would want a law like this. Parents' rights means we let parents decide how to control social media in their homes with their kids. That was one comment. Another one said, I'm absolutely amazed that a state run by a party who hates big government is all about banning everything. I have 2 kids who do not have social media, and who knows when they ever will, but why are they so ban happy? They ban books, they ban social media. How about they just parent and have conversations with their kids? How will they ever enforce this? We went over just a second ago, Brooke, how they're going to enforce it. But again, when people say that to you, how about parents just parent and have conversations with their kids? It's just not that simple and it's not that easy.
It's very difficult because, I've talked to so many parents across the country when I'm speaking to schools, and you can say no all day long to social media, but right now, if there's a will, there's a way. And if you say no, then they can easily sign up on a computer or a friend's phone or you name it. There's so many devices out there. So you can parent all you want, but your kid's not with you all the time.
Absolutely.
And they can right now, as it stands, because there's no age verification process in place, they can easily sign up without your permission and you could not even know about it.
Yeah, they just make up their birthday. That's what they do now. That is a recurring theme that I've heard from viewers and listeners. How are they going to ban it? I'm curious about the logistics because the kids can download the apps and lie about their age. It's hard to enforce. But again, the way they're going to enforce this, you have to have age verification. You can't just put in your birthday. You're going to probably have to have a photo. If they can get it through, it's going to be managed, again, by an independent, non-governmental third party that's going to verify the age of all prospective account holders. And if you're under 16, you're going to get booted off of social media. That's just how it is in the state of Florida. Another comment from a mom said, when the Surgeon General weighed in, and then it became a health issue. And health issues are already regulated for underage drinking and smoking. And I think this falls into that camp. It really is a health issue, isn't it?
It's an absolute health issue. And when we say that the Surgeon General weighed in, he weighed in with a 25-page health advisory comparable to what came out when they came out with a warning about cigarettes. So he is very concerned, and the research that he has spoken about in regards to social media is very concerning. He said in one interview that nearly half of adolescents feel worse about themselves when they're on social media. We also know that when kids spend more than 3 hours a day on social media, they're twice as likely to experience anxiety and depression, which can concern all of us because most kids that are on social media are spending at least 3 hours a day. Some kids are spending more time on social media than they are on sleeping and doing homework. They're spending 8-9 hours a day on these platforms. So it is a public health issue that affects all of them.
You mentioned the tobacco industry, the Tampa Bay Times. Again, I'll link to this article, which I got so much great information from, and it explained why they are sponsoring this bill. It says social media platforms target kids similarly to how big tobacco did with their harmful addictive products, and our kids deserve similar legal protections. So let's just get into a little bit about the logistics of getting a smartphone. And there are, again, alternatives out there. We'll get into that in a second. But again, you promote wait till 8th. That's not always going to work for every family. We kind of broke the pledge. I'm sorry, but I'm holding out for my 10-year-old. When do you give them a phone? I recently had Sissy Goff on. She is a renowned child therapist. And she said, you don't want them to be first, but you don't want them to be last. So knowing what you know now, when do you give them a phone? And knowing that there are phones available that don't have the social media, that have apps and regulations and to protect text messages and to have safe music, when is an appropriate time to give your kid a phone?
So I do truly believe, given all the research and just the journey that we've taken and all the families that I talk to, that most kids do thrive without any type of personal device in elementary school and most in middle school. I see more and more kids with like the latest Apple Watch that are in like second and third grade just because like their parents feel like they should have some way to get in touch. I think that's way too young. I think that when we put devices on very young kids, it stunts their development. They don't have decision-making skills that are developed. They don't know how to problem solve. They're always one call or text away from mom and dad. So I really encourage families, do not give your kid anything in elementary school. They don't need it. They're either at school or they're with you, or you know where they are, and you can, for most families, can manage it. Middle school is like when families really start to wrestle. Should I give them a phone or not? It feels bigger. Again, I think most families can navigate it just fine. But if you do need to get in touch, I encourage families to do a basic phone versus a fully loaded smartphone. And we have basic phones on our website, smartphone alternatives. There's, Gap, there's Pinwheel, there's the Bark phone, there's Light Phone 2. There's so many more options out there that don't have the internet browser or the app store or social media. And those are the main areas where kids are getting in trouble. So that's what we recommend. When you do say yes to the smartphone, we say yes with limits and take it very slowly. You don't want to have everything on there at first. So I really encourage families to take off the internet browser, which is possible. You can go into the screen time on there and disable the access to Safari, period. And
tell us how to do that. I'm Gen X. So I need a visual, I need a flow chart, I need a video. How do we do this? How do we remove it?
If you go to my website, you'll see a step-by-step instructions on how to take off the internet browser, how to take off access to the app store, but it's all through that screen time. You can just go in there and it takes less than 5 minutes. If you go to my website to see the actual article, it's called Help My Child Got an iPhone. What do I do now? It will list some of the loopholes that kids do to get around that. There's a way in the screen time controls to prevent that. So for families that are just starting off with a smartphone, take off the internet browser, take off the app store. Do not allow social media at first, and just try to make it a communication device. If you load that phone up with a ton of games and social media and the internet browser, of course your kid is going to be on it all the time. Why not? It's so compelling and captivating. But if you make it boring, they're not going to reach for it as much.
Yeah, it's not going to create that addictive behavior, which is what they're trying to establish. Okay, so you said basic phone, remove the internet browser, and I'll put a link to all of that, especially for all of us middle-aged people that can't figure it out and have to ask our kids, how do I remove your internet browser? I'm sure they'll appreciate that. But once they do, they're a little older. We have to also give our kids an opportunity to step into adulthood, right? I don't want to say emancipate themselves from us, but they have to start learning how to regulate themselves and making decisions. So once it is time, whether you deem that to be 15 or 16, whatever it may be for social media, how do you then put some safeguards in place, Brooke? Because you even said, I can't really control what my daughter's doing on Instagram. So how do you best monitor the wild, wild world, the wild, wild west of social media?
Yeah, so we just experienced this for the first time as a family a few months ago. My oldest daughter, she's 16. She's a sophomore in high school. She's driving now. And we recently said yes to one social media platform. We said yes to Snapchat. We wanted to start with there instead of TikTok or Instagram. I view those other platforms as pretty much pure content consumption, whereas on Snapchat, it's more peer-to-peer communication. There's no perfect social media platform and there's problems with all of them. But I would say out of the ones that we were looking at, this one made the most sense. And I see her using it to actually communicate with her friends versus just consuming what they're doing, if that makes sense.
And monitoring their likes in the comments.
Yeah, all that.
Getting caught up in the comparison.
Yes, so that
doesn't happen on Snapchat.
It doesn't happen on Snapchat. It's just a lot of texting back and forth for the most part. So we said yes to that. I encourage families to say yes to one platform at a time. Don't say yes to all of it at once. It's going to be too much for them to manage. It's going to be too much for you to manage. I also encourage families to really limit how much time they're on it. And you can do that again through screen time. Because the kids that are spending 3 hours plus on social media, what we talked about earlier, they're having a different experience than the kid that's on it maybe 30 or 40 minutes a day. We know from research that the longer they spend on it, the more likely they're going to have mental health challenges. They're going to be in more toxic situations. They're going to go down rabbit holes of content. So if you can limit how much time they're spending on it through screen time controls, and also keeping that phone out of the bedroom, that's going to make a big difference.
That's huge. My husband and I read a great book, which I'll also link. I feel like these show notes are going to have a million links, and I apologize, but hey, we want to arm you with everything. We read a book called Parenting Generation Screen. Jonathan McKee, I think, is the author, and he said, look, phones aren't the enemy, okay? But our kids need to understand that people are trying to prey on them on the other side of it. Like this is something we didn't have to deal with growing up, right? Like my son just got ripped off on PayPal and eBay. So like there are people trying to prey on our children. And he said, if you don't do anything else, make sure they do not have their phone in their bedroom at night. If you don't do anything else, have them charge it outside of the room, maybe upstairs, downstairs. And so we've done that, put some other safeguards in place too. But if you don't do anything else, do not let them have it. And don't fall for the trap that I need it for an alarm clock. Well, guess what? I'll get you an Echo or I'll get you an Amazon Alexa, and you can use that as your alarm.
Yes.
So,
every expert out there says that phones should not be in the bedroom. When they're in the bedroom, kids are not sleeping as well. They're waking up in the middle of the night to see what's going on. And then we also know from research that when phones are in the bedroom at night, they are more likely to experience risky behavior. So if your child has a phone in the bedroom at night, and this makes sense, if they probably feel a little less accountability and transparency in their bedroom at night with everybody asleep, and maybe more prone to send a message with a nude picture in it, or look at pornography, or get caught up in some type of scam. Who knows? But the research is clear on this. When the phone's in the bedroom, they're more likely for that risky behavior.
Absolutely. Brooke, Shannon, this has just been a fantastic conversation. Again, parent to parent. Again, this is probably our biggest fight. It's the biggest fight with my kids. The biggest fight with my husband is who's going to cook dinner. So that's a whole nother conversation that we can have. But we're going to put links to not just the apps and the tools that we talked about, but some additional ones that I want to link to. Fair Play for Kids. There's also something called Teen Safe, where you can monitor your kids' mobile phones. Life 360, there's Zigazoo, which is the largest social media network for kids under 16. You mentioned Gab Wireless and Bark, and there's also the Light phone. So a lot of resources. There's a lot out there. And just know, parents, if you're listening to this, you're not alone. We all want to throw the phone out the window. We all want to run it over. We would all love to take a hammer to it. So you're not alone. It has just been really good and I think encouraging to talk to you, Brooke, to know that I'm not alone, to know that there's hope on the horizon, right?
Absolutely. I think that's important just to keep in mind that we're not on an island, that there is power in community. And if you can just find a few other friends to parent alongside you in this, whether that be keeping phones out of the bedroom or delaying social media or taking a social media break, I think it makes a big difference when you have community.
Absolutely. A huge difference. It makes all the difference in the world. Brooke, thanks for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you so much.
It's been such a pleasure. Good to see you again. I hope it's not another 7 years before we talk to one another.
Right. It's good to connect. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we're going to link all of those resources in the show notes. We could probably ask our kids how to remove the App Store and the internet browser from their phones, but that kind of defeats the purpose. But all the wonderful resources and alternatives that are out there that weren't out there even a couple of years ago. It's going to be a wonderful resource page for you. Everything's going to be in the show notes. Look, I'm mildly optimistic about Florida's proposed ban. I'd love to hear what you think about it after listening to this conversation. Make sure you weigh in on my Instagram page. And if you would do me a huge favor, it'll take you maybe 10 seconds. Could you write a review of this show? That would mean so much as we continue to keep these really important conversations going, which are all spurned by you. You guys have been reaching out to me, telling me what you want to talk about. And that's why next week we are kicking off a series on relationships. And my guest co-host, my husband John, will be back as we talk to Dr. Gary Chapman about the importance of love languages in our relationships. And John may or may not have asked if sex is a love language. Yep, we go there because why not? Let's talk about it. I'll see you guys next week. I know you guys thought you were done with me, but not quite yet. I have one more thing to tell you about. If you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to subscribe to the show. I don't want you to miss a single beat or a single conversation. And remember, my DMs are always open. Tell me what you want to talk about.